Hello friends, welcome to CEC live lectures on management accounting. Myself Aditya P. Tripathi. We are here to continue our discussion on a very interesting and a new topic of service costing. This is going to be part 1 of our discussion on service costing, which is also known as operating costing. Before I tell you about what we do in service costing and in what way it is related to management accounting, we must know what is the relevance of conducting this kind of costing, why management is interested in doing such kind of calculation. Many times we go for availing some services, we visit a hotel, or we are availing some transport facilities, transport services, or any kind of services. We are visiting a hospital and doctor is prescribing certain charges, that this is going to be the charge for this particular procedure or this particular operation. So there is a calculation behind that. The moment we visit that counter, the person tells us that this is going to be the cost of this much of cost you have to bear for this specific surgery or this specific operations. So we have to first understand that it is a prescribed cost. But the question comes that who has prescribed this cost? Of course, the management. And management is not only interested into retrieval of cost, but also they wish to generate some profit out of this activity. And here comes the role of this service costing, and here comes the importance or significance of operating costing for management accountants. Or if we say management, the top management is interested in knowing that what is my cost of offering this service, and in what manner the profit can be generated out of this activity. So suppose if you visit a particular hotel and you wish to avail a specific category of room, then of course they are telling you about the charges, that this is a charge plus GST, if I talk about the Indian scenario. So while deciding or determining that charge, they have to actually keep in mind what are the cost which they have to incur. So there is a complete list of calculation which is being made by them, and after that they are adding some margin to that, and then tell us that see, this is the price, or these are the charges which you have to bear with. Same is the case of transportation services. Suppose if you are availing the services of a particular bus operator or of a particular taxi or a particular fleet of taxis, then of course they tell us that this is going to be the charge for us. And for that, the costing which they are applying is basically known as, the method of costing which they apply is known as service costing, and since they are into operations, it is also known as operating costing. So with this background with this as a background to this topic, my agenda for today's discussion shall be that I'll be telling you what is service costing, what is meaning of it, how do we define it, what is the nature and importance of it, and along with that we shall be attempting some numerical problems to have a better understanding of this topic of service costing. So let us first understand what is service costing or what is operating costing. Specifically speaking, it is used where the articles are not produced but the services are rendered. So wherever you find the component of services, then of course we are going to use a method of costing which is known as service costing or operating costing. As far as definition of it is concerned, the Institute of Cost and Management Accountants (ICMA) UK has defined it as a form of operation costing which applies where the standardized services are provided either by an undertaking or by a service cost center within an undertaking. So either that particular company is providing that service or a specific department into that organization is offering that service. That is going to be called as operating costing, or we also call it as service costing. So interchangeably we are using these two terms. Either you call it service costing or you call it operating costing. They stand for similar meaning. Now the question comes that in nutshell, what do we mean by service costing? In brief, how do we define the service costing? It is basically a method concerned with the establishment of the cost of services rendered. So suppose we are dealing with any organization where we are offering some kind of services, then of course the costing which the method of costing which the management is going to deploy is supposed to be called as service costing. So service costing, since it is the name itself is clarifying that it is dealing with the services, you are going to calculate the cost of that service, and along with that, of course, we have to go for deciding a price of that service. Then service costing involves not only the computation of cost, not only the ascertainment of cost, but also addition of margin to that to determine the price of that particular service which we are going to avail. So service costing in brief, we have is dealing with the institutions which are offering services. Since services are perishable, we cannot store them, we cannot stock them. We all know about the services, that it is wherever the service is there, the role of manpower is involved, and of course that cost need to be ascertained while determining the price. If you ask me for the instances where the service costing is applied, very simple it is to explain. In transport services, suppose if you are willing to avail some transport services, for instance in Delhi Metro, while determining the charge from one station to another, Delhi Metro keeps an account of the cost which they are incurring, and of course commensurate to that cost they are deciding the price, that this is going to be the charge for the service which you are availing. Not only metro, if you talk about the state transport services, if you talk about the railways where the price of a ticket is decided, and many times the government institutions, they come up with the data that when you are availing this service, you are availing a subsidy offered by the government. Actually the cost was this much, but you are being charged this much only. Just to make it communicable to the public, just to communicate it to the general public that the government is working in the interest of public welfare, social welfare, and that subsidy is being transferred to those customers. But in any case, government is also doing that costing, the service costing. If they are into services, they also resort to this kind of method for ascertaining the cost. So regardless of the type of institution, whether it's a government institution or it's a private institution, the service costing has no change. It is neutral to that type of organizations we are dealing with. We basically calculate or ascertain the cost of service, and then of course the price is being determined. If you refer to the hotel industry, there are also hospitals where we are availing services. In case of tourism industry, where you are visiting a particular tourist place, there also they are charging some amount from us on account of tickets and all. Retail distribution, financial services, and the list is exhaustive. So wherever you find service and you have to ascertain the cost, the method which we are supposed to apply is known as service costing. So regardless of the type of service, if it is falling into the category of services, then of course the costing which we are doing here is going to be called as service costing. So in service costing, we have to first understand that it is dealing with the services, but it may also be applied within a manufacturing setting. Now you must be thinking, sir, earlier you told us that we only apply it in case of services. Now you are saying that it is into manufacturing industries also. Remember, within the manufacturing industry, suppose if you have certain sets of services to be offered, then of course the costing which you are going to apply is going to be called as service costing. For instance, suppose if a manufacturer is willing to calculate the cost of certain services, say transport services or catering services or computing and IT services or accounting, then service costing is the remedy, service costing is a solution. For instance, suppose if we are a manufacturing organization and we are offering cab facility to our employees, we are offering transport services to our employees, for reaching a place on time, then of course we do calculate the cost, we do ascertain the cost, and that comes under the purview of service costing. So even the manufacturing institution, if you are a manufacturing company, that doesn't mean that for you the service costing is not applicable, and that is why the definition given by ICMA itself says that it is not only the organization, but also there can be a department within the organization which is dealing with certain services, and there we apply this method of costing which is known as service costing. So it depends that whether you manufacture only products or you also offer services. So wherever you offer services, and if you are doing costing, service costing is the only solution. Now the question comes, what is the difference between the product costing and service costing? what is the basic difference between the two? If you ask me, I would say that the difference is very abysmal, very nominal, very few, especially when we talk about the product costing. The material is supposed to be there, whereas in case of services, material may or may not be there. So in case of the costing method, we have to understand that overheads will comprise the most significant portion of any cost, and normally in case of services, the labor cost is finding prominence, and it is so much so that it may go to the level of 75% of total cost. So out of your total cost of say 100 rupees, 75 rupees may be attributed to the labor only, because we are dealing with the services. So barring this difference, if you ask me, there is no further difference between the two. But yes, of course, the way we have to take up the service costing is entirely different from that of material costing, the product costing, where we take up material, labor and overheads. Here also we take all three components if they are present. But yes, of course, the prominence of labor is found here in case of services costing. So the question comes in case of service costing, whether we are talking about profit or we are talking about cost center. So many organizations, if you ask me, they are simply willing to determine the cost of operating its services from a management control point of view. Management is willing to ascertain the cost and then exercise some control over that particular cost, and for that they are exercising this service costing. Otherwise, they do have their unit costing method, where they calculate prime cost, works cost, cost of production, total cost, and then they determine the profit here. But when they are exercising, when the management is using this operating costing, the objective is not only to ascertain the cost, but also to exercise some control over this cost if it is increasing. So it is helpful, it is a very helpful technique in the hands of the management for exercising the control over the cost. However, if you ask me, I would say that there may be some organizations which operate services for their own as well as subcontracting them. Some of the organizations, they are subcontracting services, and for that also they are willing to know that what is my cost, whether I should offer this service or I should go for outsourcing. The same we have already discussed in case of marginal costing, but there we were talking about make or buy, shut down or continue. But here in case of service costing, we are trying to know that what is my cost of this specific service which I am offering to my client, and then what should be the price which can generate some profit for the firm, because ultimate goal is profit maximization, or what you call as wealth maximization. So in case of service cost unit, we should know what can be the unit for service cost, what are the cost units for a service. I would give you certain examples that which will help you in understanding that these can be the service cost units. So if you take example of transport services, it can be per kilometer or it can be per ton kilometers. If you are transporting goods, it can be per ton kilometers. If it is a passenger, of course, per passenger kilometer it can be. So because you are covering distance. In case of hotels, it can be per room. The person is availing that staying services. So in case of hotels, it can be per room, and if it is the other services, then of course the per day or depending on the nature of service, the units can be assigned. But for hotels, the service cost unit is per room. Charges are decided on the basis of every room which you are occupying into that hotel, they are charging. In case of hospitals, it is per patient day, for how many days patient is staying. So room rent is basically calculated on the basis of the stay of patient in the hospital. So it can be per patient day, or it can be per bed, or it can be per operation or procedure. If there is a package kind of service where the hospital is offering you service which includes the room and other charges, then of course based on operation or procedure, they are prescribing the charges to us. So the service cost unit can be decided by the management itself, by the person by the institution who is offering that service. But of course there is a specific unit to that. In case of transport, hotel, hospital, I tried to exemplify them so that you can understand the way it is being calculated. Now, if you talk about the nature of service costing, remember it is basically there are certain fixed or standing charges. There are some charges which are semi-fixed or what you call as semi-variable, because they are maintenance charges, and there are some charges which are basically known as running charges, and from the point of view of costing we can call them as variable charges. So it can be fixed, it can be variable, it can be semi-variable. So here is the point where I would like to clarify that it is just like the product costing in terms of classifying the cost. Just like we have been doing in case of product costing, we were classifying the cost into the fixed cost, variable cost, semi-variable cost. Likewise, here also we do the same. But yes, what is the key feature of service costing that we should understand? The key feature of service costing is that mostly such costs are fixed in nature. If you are offering a transport services, whether you have one passenger or you are having all passengers, all seats are occupied, your cost of running shall remain the same. Suppose if you talk about the hotel, the maintenance charges are the same. You have to maintain all the rooms regardless of occupancy, whether all rooms are occupied or not, but you have to take care of all standing charges. Yes, we are not denying to the fact that variable charges are supposed to be incurred only when you are availing, but what about the standing charges or semi-fixed charges? So the key feature of service costing is that mostly such costs are fixed in nature, and they are usually not influenced by the size of audience. If you talk about the multiplexes where you are going for watching movies, there also, while deciding the price of price per ticket, they do consider the cost involved into that. But that doesn't mean that if you are having 50% of occupancy, you are going to show half of the movie. No, the complete movie is going to be displayed, or those who are sitting, those who have bought their ticket, those who have made payment at your counter, what is their fault if others are not turning up, if your seats are not occupied? The same is the case of transport facilities. Suppose if I board metro, and in that metro, out of all 8 coaches, only 2 coaches are occupied by the passengers. So will metro say that no, we shall wait for 2 hours, or we shall wait till all the seats are occupied? Answer is no, because we are being promised the services. So this is the point where the service costing differs from that of product costing. In case of product costing, of course, you are paying only when you are getting the product. You are paying and then you are getting the product. But in case of services, so the products which are not being sold out, they are there into your stock. Whereas in case of services, you are not stocking any service. So we have to keep this thing in mind, that this is the key feature which differentiate the service costing with that of product costing. So with this understanding of service costing, we are going to solve certain numerical problems to have a clear understanding of this topic of service costing. So I try to first tell you what exactly we mean by service costing, what is the use of it, what is the significance of it, what are those industries where we are using this service costing. So unless we know the background of it, we cannot solve practical problems. So let us have a practical problem in front of us, numerical problem, where a municipal corporation arranges for the removal of garbage by the way of motor vehicle transport. So it's a service which is being offered by a municipal corporation. So again, a semi-government or government organization which is offering services. Now they are offering you certain details. They have number of vehicles with certain specifications. They have 20 vehicles with having a capacity of 5 tons. So lorries are having their capacities of 5 tons, 4 tons, 3 tons and 2 tons, and their respective number is also given. This municipal corporation is reporting that they have 30 vehicles having a capacity of 4 tons. So they can carry the garbage to the extent of 4 tons, 4 ton lorries they are calling it. 50 vehicles having 3 ton capacity of 3 tons, and they are called as 3 ton lorries, and 40 vehicles are there having a capacity of 2 tons. Now further, this corporation is reporting that on an average each lorry makes 6 trips a day. So the lorry is ferrying for 6 trips. So there are 6 rounds for which it is working in a day, and in each trip covers an average distance of 5 kilometers. So that lorry has to cover a distance of 5 kilometers. and each lorry is carrying a garbage of 60% of its capacity. So whatever is its total capacity, it is basically utilizing only 60% of that. Further, it is reporting on an average 20% of the lorries are laid up for repairs. So they are held up for repairs. So whatever is total number of lorry available with us, 20% of them, they are basically into the repairs on an average, because you have to maintain. And the conservancy work is carried out daily. When we talk about conservancy work, we are talking about protecting the environment, we are talking about the cleaning and all. So it is carried out daily. Now what is required from us? We have to calculate ton kilometer utilized for removal of garbage per month. Now in this specific problem, the municipal corporation is interested in knowing that how many tons of garbage you have removed. Their objective, because they know their total cost amount they are spending, but from the point of view of reporting it to the general public or reporting it to the higher ups, they are willing to know that what is the total ton kilometer utilized for removal of garbage per month. So it is very simple to calculate. Question seems to be very complex, but I am telling you it is very easy to understand, provided you know the way to calculate it. So they are asking you to calculate ton kilometer utilized for removal of garbage per month. Very simple, let us solve. So number of vehicles and their specification is given. We can calculate total capacity. It is very simple to calculate. 20 vehicles having 5 tons capacity, if you multiply them, you come to know about the total capacity of it, which is 100 tons. 30 vehicles in 4 ton category, it is giving me a total capacity of 120 tons. 50 vehicles with 3 ton capacity, it is giving me a total capacity of 150 tons, and 40 vehicles with 2 ton capacity, it is giving me a total capacity of 80 tons, which means this is the amount of garbage they are going to ferry, or they are going to clean, or they are going to remove. So if I aggregate them, the total capacity comes to be 450 tons, right? So it is very simple to calculate. Number of vehicles, their total capacity multiplied, it is 450 tons. Now ton kilometer we have to calculate. Total, it is very simple to calculate. Total capacity into trip per day, we shall multiply. Then the distance is to be multiplied, because they are asking about ton kilometer. So total capacity into trip per day into distance. But remember, since we are not utilizing 100% of the capacity of that vehicle, we have to also multiply, we have to also keep in mind the capacity utilization. So suppose if it is 80%, I shall be multiplying the total capacity into trip per day into distance with that of capacity utilization. Then I have to take care of the effective usage, where the vehicle is laid for, or it is going for repairs. So that also supposed to be eliminated, or that also supposed to be adjusted. So into effective use, and then number of days in a month, of course, because this is going to give me a per day calculation. So number of days in a month is supposed to be multiplied with total to arrive at ton kilometer. So very simple, 450 is total capacity, into 6 trips per day they are making, into 5 kilometers is per trip. So this is giving me the total ton kilometer. But capacity utilization is 60%, and 20% vehicles were going for repairs. So out of that, 80% were on work, and we are having 30 days working. So this is going to be the multiplication way, and it is giving me a total amount of 1,94,400 ton kilometer. So this is the total total of the sum total of, or the aggregation of this particular service which this municipal corporation is offering. So by this, what we got? You must be thinking, what is the outcome? In what way I am going to use this 1,94,400 ton kilometers? It is giving me not only the tons of garbage we have removed effectively, but also the kilometers you have covered, because in every trip those vehicles are traveling for 5 kilometers. So if I only tell you that 450 ton is the capacity, and they are making 6 trips, and into 60% into 80% into 30 days, I can only come to know about the total amount of total quantity of garbage that they have removed. But it will not include the distance which those vehicles are covering. And if you don't report the distance, from where you will get the fuel charges? Because in order to remove those garbages, this much of garbage, we need some fuel, because those vehicles are supposed to run. So that is why calculating it in terms of ton kilometer is quite significant. So this is the first example of applying this service costing in a municipal organization, in a municipal corporation, where they are into a service of removing garbages, right? Let us take another example, problem number 2. A bus, now it is an example of transport company. A particular bus started from Delhi to Mussoorie with 50 passengers on board. So they have taken 50 passengers. 20 passengers they got off at Dehradun, and the bus proceeded with remaining passengers. So it means 50 passengers with which you started, 20 passengers they got off in Dehradun. So later on you had 30 passengers only. Now in the evening what happened? The same bus left Mussoorie with 50 passengers and 10 passengers got off at Dehradun, and the bus resumed the journey with remaining passengers for Delhi. Now this company is reporting you that the distance between Delhi and Dehradun is 280 kilometers, and then Dehradun to Mussoorie is 20 kilometers only. And they are asking you to calculate what? Cost per passenger kilometer if the total cost of running the bus amounts to be rupees 50,000. So they are willing to know that what is my cost per passenger. Now you must be thinking, what is the purpose of knowing it? Because this transport corporation might be interested in knowing that how much should be the minimum charge per kilometer which we should charge from our passengers. So let us see how to calculate. Very simple it is. Total passenger kilometers first we have to calculate. So Delhi to Dehradun total distance is 280 kilometers. We started with 50 passengers. So it is giving me a total passenger kilometer of 14,000. Now further going ahead, Dehradun to Mussoorie, 30 passengers into 20 kilometers, it is giving me 600 passenger kilometers. After that, while coming for return journey from Mussoorie to Dehradun, we had 50 passengers covering 20 kilometers. It is giving me passenger kilometer of 1000, and for remaining Dehradun to Delhi we had 40 passengers. They are covering for the entire 280 kilometers. So total distance comes to be 11,200 passenger kilometers. So total passenger kilometer comes to be 26,800 kilometers. Now I'll tell you why are we calculating passenger kilometers when I'll do the calculation of per passenger per kilometer cost, right? Now the total cost of running is 50,000. Total passenger kilometer covered is 26,800. So what is cost per passenger kilometer? 50,000 divided by 26,800 kilometer, and the cost comes to be 1 rupee and 86 paisa. So if this transport company is willing to determine the price which is to be charged from every passenger for every kilometer travel, the minimum cost is 1 rupees and 86 paisa. So it means this is the minimum charge which you are supposed to take from the customer, from the passenger, otherwise you will incur loss. So what is the purpose behind calculating passenger kilometer? Purpose is to multiply this passenger total number of passengers with the distance they have covered, so that we can calculate cost per passenger kilometer. So my dear learners, in this way only we do the calculation of the cost of offering that services, and later on after computing or ascertaining the cost, the margin is being added to arrive at the price which we are supposed to charge from our customers. So I hope you must have understood the basics of service costing with these two examples. Very soon I'll be coming up with some other numerical problems. Thank you so much.